Hi, and welcome to the next video tutorial about WebCenter. Today I'm going to cover portlets and inter-portlet communication with the GSR 286 standard. So, since PS3, WebCenter fully supports GSR 286 standard, which is a big improvement over the GSR 168 standard. So this is what I'm going to cover now. As a demo, I'm going to build two portlets, one that takes one parameter, and the next one will show the value of that parameter, and it will pass the value to each other. And in the next section, I will show you how to consume these portlets and how WebCenter will wire these portlets together. So first of all, we're starting our JDeveloper, and we'll create a new application. So in the new gallery, when you install the WebCenter extensions, you should be able to create a portlet producer application. So this is what we're going to do now. We specify a name, portlet demo, for example, and everything can be set to the default. And when you take a look at the project, you see it's empty. It doesn't have any file in it. This is because all the files will be created when we create our first portlet. So this is what we are going to do now. Right click on your portlet application, select new, and from the web tier select portlets, and you can select Oracle PDK or standard based Java portlet. We are going to create standard based Java portlets because Oracle PDK Java portlets it's in fact an older standard that was created by Oracle before the portlet standard existed. So Oracle Portal uses this standard, and by doing so you can create portlets that are compatible with both WebCenter and older versions of Oracle Portal. But in WebCenter, when you create portlets, you'll always be using standard-based Java portlets. So press OK, and then we need to give our portlet a name. So the first portlet will be the input portlet. You also need to specify a class because each portlet should extend the generic portlet class. This is specified in the standard. So we need to specify a class, and JDeveloper will create this class for us, so we don't need to bother. We need to specify a package, and that's it. And in the second page we can specify the display name. This will be used I think as the default title, and it will also be used in the resource catalog of WebCenter. Keywords can be used to find the portlet in the resource catalog. You can change this if you want, but for this demo purpose we don't need to specify anything special. Now, as the content types, this is a very important step in creating the portlet, because in this step you will decide whether or not you are going to create an ADF portlet or a standard regular GSP portlet. Now, because we are working with WebCenter, we are creating an ADF portlet. There are some limitations about ADF portlets because all ADF portlets are rendered in an iframe. So this means that from the moment the portlet is rendered on the page, the size of the portlet will remain the same. So if your content grows, then you will get scroll bars, which is not really that user friendly, but it's due to limitations of ADF. And I think Oracle is working to solve this, but I think it will be solved in 12C or G or whatever Oracle is deciding. So for now we're stuck with the iframe rendering of ADF portlets. So the edit mode is the mode where we can personalize the portlet. So I will talk about this in the next step. Well, we can also specify the ADF faces GSP for it. In the next step we can add preferences to the portlet. So there are some people that sometimes confuse preferences with parameters. Preferences are personalizations that you can do on portlets. So each preference can be set by every user separately, while parameters are, well, exactly what they are, parameters, so that you can communicate with other portlets, but they do not personalize the portlet. It's more customization. So in the preferences, you can add preferences so that you can personalize the portlet. So for example, if you are building a news portlet, then you might add a preferences for the category so that each user can personalize which category he wants to see in the portlet, or the number of news items he wants to see in the portlet. So these are typical preferences that you would add here. In the security roles, you can map security roles to your portlet, but we are not going to specify anything. You can specify caching. Normally you do not specify caching here, but this is how the GSR 286 standard works. So they say that you can specify caching in the portlet.xml, but normally WebCenter will cache the portlet in the web tier, and you can configure this in the web cache. So most of the times you will specify do not cache by default, because we will cache it on a separate level. And then we can press finish. And now you will see that JDeveloper will create all these files. The most important file is the portlet.xml, and people who have worked with WebCenter before PS3 will see a big difference, because before PS3 we had only the portlet.xml as an XML file, sorry, which is the source. So this was how it was before PS3. You need to make modifications here. You need to know the XML format, and you need to know where to edit the values. Now we have the design, which is more a wizard kind of view, which is much better. It's much easier, and it gives a nicer overview of your portlet, of in fact your producer, because the portlet.xml is a descriptor file for your producer. And as you can see, we have a top portlets, where we can see a list of all the registered portlets. We have created our input portlet. This is the first one. In a few minutes we will create a second one, which will be added here as a portlet. So we have our view.gspx, which is an ADF page. The same for edit.gspx, and JDeveloper will automatically add an input text for each preference, and a command button which will save all these values to the container. So we don't need to take care of anything. JDeveloper will create this automatically. We only need to design the view.gspx, and this is exactly what we are going to do now. So we will create an input text and a command button. The input text will be available for the users to put their value in, and the command button will pass the value to whichever portlet it's listening. So before we need to do that, we need to create a Java class to store the actual value. So we'll right click our project, and from the general section specify Java class, and we'll give it the input bean name. Package will be portlet.beans. Okay, and we register this class as a managed bean in the faces config. So I hope you all know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about managed beans and stuff like that. Class name is input bean portlet.beans, because GSF is basic stuff you need to know about WebCenter. If you don't know about GSF, then it's time to learn WebCenter, and you should get to know GSF quite well before you start with WebCenter. So I've created my input bean as a managed bean, and now I can start working on my view.gspx. First of all, I'm going to drop a panel form layout to put my input text and command button in. So input text, put it here. Instead of label, I specify parameter 1 and a command button. Alright. And I put it in the footer, and I say save. Now, in our input bean, we need to create a parameter or an attribute to store the actual value from the user. So private string will be param, for example. Create the accessor. That's it. And now we can bind it here in the input text as a value. That's input bean param. So now when we press the submit button, this attribute will get the value specified by the user. Now remove param1, save one also. Okay, so there are two things that we need to do now to finish this portlet, and that is create the actual parameter and write the Java code that will be executed by this button. So first of all, we will be creating the parameter. This is done in the portlet.xml. Now, parameters are created on a producer level, so not on a portlet level. People who have worked with WebCenter before PS3, they will know about the Oracle portlet.xml, where we need to register the parameter with the portlet itself, while the GSR 286 standard specifies that we register a parameter as a public parameter over the producer. So when we open the portlet.xml, we have a section parameters where we can create parameters. Just press the plus button, specify a name and identifier. Specify param1 or whatever. And now we need to register these parameters to each portlet that requires the usage of this parameter. So select the portlet tab, specify your portlet, and then we can select in the parameters tab. We have here a list of all the parameters specified from here. So on the left are all the available, and we have to move it to the right to select it. So now this parameter is registered as a parameter for this portlet, which means that we can use it, we can set it, and we can get the actual value. And this is exactly what we are going to do now. So from our command button, we will execute some Java code that will set the value of the parameter. So select the command button, and we'll go to action listener, edit, select our managed bean, and we'll create a new managed method to save. Okay, and now we can implement this method, and you set the value of the parameter on the action response. So we need to get a reference to the action response of the portlet. So the action response is actually an object on the faces context. It's on the external context. So first of all, we need to get double context. The current instance, then the external context, and then the response. There it is. And because it's defined as an object, we need to cast it to the action response. Alright. And now it's very easy. On the response, we have the method set render parameter, which has two parameters. The first one is the name of the parameter, which is specified in the portlet.xml, and the second one is the actual value, which is our attribute specified here. So this value must match the value specified here. So this and this must be the same. It's case sensitive, so make sure that it's the same. And that's all we need to do. Let me just check. We have our input text, where the user will specify a value. When he presses the save button, our code will be triggered, and this value will be set on the action response, which is exactly what we want. Now, if you are used to working with ADF, you might put something like this, on your command button. So ADF works a lot with Ajax to present the user with a modern user experience without refreshing the complete page. This actually causes issues when you're working with portlets, especially when you're trying to put some parameters on the action response. Because when we're working with Ajax, it's a partial submit, which means that the lifecycle of the portlet is not really triggered as it should be, and the action response and request is not available. So when you try to execute this with a partial submit equals true, then you will get a nasty error saying that he cannot convert some proxy class to the action response. So this is because you have the partial submit. So you can never use partial submit when you are trying to set a parameter. So that's it for our first portlet. Now let's create the second portlet, the one that will output the actual value. So right click the project and specify portlets. Again, the same steps as in the beginning, and instead of input we'll say output portlet, the class output portlet. Rest can be the same. Also default, specify ADF faces GSPX, same goes for here. Next, all default, finish. So now we have two classes. Now when we take a look at the class, you will see he extends the ADF bridge portlet, which is the class created by ADF with the ADF bridge, because the GSR 286 standard specifies how portlets should react or work with the container based on GSP, but it does not say how the lifecycle of GSF will be implemented in portlets. So that's why Oracle came up with this bridge, which allows us to create GSF portlets or portlets that use ADF technology. But in the end, when we click on it and go through, you'll see he extends the JavaX portlet faces generic faces portlet. When you click on it, he extends the generic portlet. So this is exactly what it should do according to the standard. Alright, so now let's create the actual portlet. We also need to create a new managed bean for it. We can use the same bean, but it's a good practice to use different managed beans for different portlets. So let's create a new Java class, say output bean, put it in beans, that's fine. And here we will create a method, public string get param, and in this method we will get the value of the parameter. In the previous portlet we set the value of the parameter by executing the set render parameter on the action response. Getting the parameter is done on the request. So we need to get a reference to the portlet request, which is done on the same way. So we get the current instance of the faces context, the external context, get request, and we need to cast it to the portlet request. Portlet request, that's it. And getting the value is fairly easy. It's just say get parameter, and we need to specify the name. So also the value here must match exactly as specified here. So output bean, that's it, return param. In the first portlet, we have registered the parameter to the portlet, and we need to do this here also. So go to the portlet.xml, go to portlets, and now we have two portlets in the list, which is fine. Select the output portlet. From the parameters tab, we need to register the parameters as well. So if you don't do this, then this portlet will not or he will not be able to read the value of the parameter. So this is a very important step. If you forget this, it will not work. And that's about it for our coding. Now we can create the GSPX page for our output portlet, which is very easy. Oh, right. I need to register my output bean as a managed bean. So output bean portlet.beans output bean portlet.beans. So session. Alright, let's save it, and let's go to the view.gspx of our output portlet, and we'll just have an output text here, and as a value specify output bean. I'm just adding a little value before it. So that's it. That should work. Now, in order to test this, this is a little bit more difficult because portlets cannot run on themselves. They always need to run in a context of a portal. So you just can't say right click and run. This won't work. So in order to test them, you need to deploy them on an actual WebLogic server, and you need to register these portlets as a producer to an actual application. So this is exactly what we are going to do now. So let's deploy it. Right click on your project and say, oh wait, just one more thing. First we are going to change the context root of our application. So right click on the project, say project properties, Java EE application, and remove all this from the context root, so it's a little bit more, this is a little bit smaller, so that's easier, because this will be added to the URL to register the producer, so it's a lot easier. Alright, and now we can deploy it. We have to make a new deployment profile, and it's a portlet, so we need to deploy it as a WAR file. In the end it will create an EAR file, so deployment profile name can remain the same, does not really matter, and everything here is okay by default, so we don't need to change anything. Okay, right click, deploy web app application server. Alright, before you do this, make sure that your integrated WebLogic server of JDeveloper is running. If it isn't running, just say run start server instance and he will start your server. Wait until he says integrated WebLogic server started, and then you can deploy. So when this is done, right click on your project, say deploy application server, and select integrated WebLogic server. Next, and finish. And JDeveloper will see that we have created a portlet.xml, so he recognizes it as a producer. WebCenter works with WSRP, which stands for Web Service for Remote Portlets. So if you work with other portals like Liferay or IBM or whatever, most of them they are working with native portlets. So you just deploy an EAR file and you can use the portlets in the portal. While WebCenter works differently, it only works with WSRP. So the reason for this is scalability. If you deploy portlets on a different server than your portal, then it's very easy to scale only your portal or only your portlet. So this is quite good, and you might think, well, it uses a lot of web services, which is XML, which causes a lot of overhead, but this process is quite optimized by Oracle. It's working very good, and the performance is really good, so there's no need to bother about this. So in this step, JDeveloper will notice that you have portlets, and he will create all the assets to convert the portlet to WSRP. He will create a lot of XML files, a lot of WSDLs, which are required to register your portlet. If you're not using JDeveloper, then you need to create them manually, and this is a lot of work. So press yes. So he will create them for you. Say OK, and here in the deployment you can follow the process of the deployment. It usually takes not that long. When everything is done, JDeveloper will output the actual URL. So that's this. You copy this and you go to your favorite browser and you paste the URL. Now, when you're working on a local host, you get the IP address. I always change this because my IP address changes also quite a lot. So this is the test page. Well, test page, it's not really a test page, it's an overview page of your portlet. It will display all the portlets that are available in your producer, and you have links to the WSRP, which I was talking about. And you need these links to register your portlet. So leave the page open, and meanwhile I will go back to JDeveloper and I will create the application to consume these portlets. So just go to File, New, Application, WebCenter Portal Application, press OK, and we'll say Portlet Test. Next, everything is fine. Press Finish, and WebCenter project will be created with all the assets, resource catalogs, navigation models, and so on and so forth. So when this is done, we need to register our portlet as our producer within the application. So JDeveloper is done. In the application resource, all the connections are managed here, and a producer is a connection. So first of all, go back to your browser and click on the WSRP v2 WSDL and copy the URL. Copy, go back to JDeveloper, right click connections, new connection. Where is my WSRP producer? You need to specify a name, so just say portlets or whatever you like, and then you need to specify the URL, which is the one we just copied. Press next. Now he will read the content of that WSDL, and you can specify the timeout if required. If you use security, you can configure it here. We're not using them for now, so just press finish. Alright, so if you open them, you see WSRP, and the two portlets are available here. Now we don't need to do anything else, just right click your portal project and say run. So now he is deploying the portal project to our integrated WebLogic server, and when everything is done, there we have it. So now WebCenter is starting. Alright, I log in with WebLogic 1, because we are going to add these portlets at runtime. So now just go to edit mode by pressing Ctrl Shift E, This is our composer. Add content. This will open our resource catalog, and by default the standard resource catalog contains a folder that will display all the portlets if we have registered them. And you see this is our producer, and we can add both of them. So let's click on input portlet. Just wait until it's added. Alright, as you can see, it takes a while. This is because now the integrated WebLogic server is starting the actual portlet, and when this is done we can add our output portlet. This also will take some time. That's it. We can close it, and we can close this. Okay, so now we have our portlets on our page and we can test it. So we have our output portlet, our input portlet, and our little pencil, so we can personalize it and we can actually set our title. So if everything goes well, when I specify a parameter here, say value or whatever, and I press save, it will automatically be displayed here. And there you have it, value. As you can see, because he doesn't use Ajax, he completely refreshes this page, and well, this portlet, and this portlet. The actual page stays the same, he only refreshes the portlets. And the way WebCenter works is that he looks at the parameters that are configured for each portlet, and if they have the same name, then WebCenter will automatically wire them together and refreshes the portlets when one of the parameters changes. So in previous versions of WebCenter, we need to wire them together by configuring page parameters and setting partial triggers, and it's quite a lot of work. It was quite difficult, quite confusing for most people, while nowadays it's very easy, it's done automatically. So as you can see from the work we've done, it's very easy, just a few lines of code. When we take a look at it, setting the parameter is just these lines, getting the value of the parameter is just these lines, and that's it. All the rest is done by WebCenter itself. So very easy. Never forget to register the where's my portlet.xml. Never forget to register the parameters to your portlet.xml. So here, specify parameters. You need to select them. The same for all your parameters where you want to use. The same for all your portlets. You want to use these parameters, and that's it. So it's quite easy in the latest version of WebCenter, especially if you worked with other versions of WebCenter. So this is how inter-portlet communication works based on parameters. I hope this was useful. If you have tips, comments, questions, just let me know and I can answer them. Thanks for watching. See you next time.